Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. Today I decided we gotta bring back the Hug in a Mug series. That's it. It's been a while. This time we got a really cute mug, so I wanted to bring a little moment to the mug. It's got a cute little nose and these flowers. And it is filled with a really nice, nutty, caffeine-free tea. And I've added a splash of milk and a teaspoon of wildflower honey, and it is scrumptious and perfect for this rainy day. So the topic that I wanted to talk about today is the difference between a job and a calling. What an interesting idea, a job and a calling. To me, like many things in life, I think it goes back to the underlying motivation with which you pursue a line of work. I think a good place to start this conversation is to really think about how many of us end up in our jobs. A lot of us end up in kind of narrow jobs that are in one field, and they have a very defined set of skills, and they often require expertise, and you are often competing with people who have that expertise, so now you have to be a subject matter area expert. And the way you become one is something that our education system helps us do, because what you do over time is you take a person who was exposed to like a broad number of subjects and a broad number of talents, like even up until high school, where you're able to take all sorts of different classes and you take kind of the same number, and then you slowly start narrowing them down. So let's say you're in high school and you're approaching like your last year of high school. A lot of time in your last year of high school, you have a little bit more choice. Like if you're going to take an AP subject, do you want to take AP Spanish, or do you want to take AP Economics, or do you want to take AP Math? And most of the time, people are going to pick the subjects they think they're going to do well in, right? They want to keep their GPA up. So rather than picking things for their intrinsic interest, they're picking things to hedge their bets, right? They're trying to gamble on what they will be most successful at. And so they're usually picking the things that they think match their competencies. And so they start picking the subjects that they think they have a better shot at doing well in, and they start eliminating the things that they don't feel as naturally good at. Sounds logical enough. Well, this keeps happening. So then you go to college, and at some point you have to declare a major, and whatever your major is, you're going to have to take more classes in that subject. And so those kinds of classes are really going to affect your GPA. So yeah, a lot of us go to college and we have enough room to do some, dabbling in this and that. And maybe we have some extracurriculars, and maybe we join an a cappella group or like a sports league or something. But unless you're recruited and playing official sports, you probably have already kind of made sports a more minor part of your life. And unless you're pursuing something that's in the arts, now the arts have also become extracurricularized, and now you're in the world of academic subjects, and you got to pick subjects that are going to center around one theme, and that's going to be your major. So again, we continue to eliminate the things that just aren't our most natural talents, the things that we think are going to give us the most bang for our buck. And we start hedging our bets and trying to pick the things we think will be the most competent in. Then you have to figure out, what you're going to do in the workplace. And we're assuming like this is now, say you've gone through the college system. If you didn't go through the college system, obviously there's plenty of people who get lots of jobs without college degrees. But say you are coming out of the college system and you can either go straight into the workplace or you can pursue graduate education. So if you go straight into the workplace, you've kind of gathered that you have the skills and the competencies you need for certain jobs, and you're going to apply to those, and you're going to continue to cultivate the skills and competencies that relate to the job that you qualified for. And that may or may not relate to the subjects that you studied in your major, but you found a way to convince these employers that you qualify for these jobs, and so you've got a job. And now you're going to continue over many years to become more and more competent at that job. And over time, you might even become an expert in some area that you were already most likely going to be competent in because you were picking the ingredients that already were your competencies in order to pick that line of work. So you usually find that people end up in a job that they're fairly competent in because they've had to make little micro decisions all along that led them to that job, and most people are rational and they're going to pick the things that they think they're naturally a little more good at. Now, some of us go to graduate school, and all we do is that whole process a little bit delayed, right? So you go to graduate school, you're probably, again, picking the kind of graduate program that you think you're going to be good at, and you have to take an entrance test for a lot of them, and then you have to continue to produce high quality things that are very stressful to produce. So you do the same thing. You take all your core classes and you see how you do when you have all of those, and then you start doing some internships and you kind of start seeing where you're succeeding and where you're getting that feedback of oh, okay, I think I'm doing well at this. I think someone will hire me to do this. I think I could get this skill. You kind of tend to gravitate towards that field, and it often comes from things you're familiar with. I want to pause here and mention this piece of familiarity. Because I do think in our lives, we often are competent at things that we just happened to be more familiar with and we were exposed to at an early age. So for example, my mother is a doctor. And so when I was young, I had a lot of help from her when it came to studying things like biology and chemistry and physics and stuff like that. So when I was studying for these tests, I felt like my mom could really help me understand the nitty-gritty, and I didn't feel the same ability for her to help me when it came to things like economics and U.S. history. She didn't even grow up in the U.S., so she had never really studied U.S. history in a school or anything like that. So now it's interesting, I didn't end up in medicine, but I'm just saying that sometimes you end up competent in something, and it's not necessarily just because you are innately better at it. It could just be that you had more exposure to it and you're more familiar with it. And so a lot of the decisions we make about what job we want to do are ultimately driven by fear. There is a fear that is leading us to pick certain classes over others, certain majors over others, certain schools over others, and certain jobs over others. And it's there's this huge fear that you won't be good enough if you pick the other options that are kind of intriguing you. So you go with the one that seems like it is the most logical, and it's going to fit your skill set, and it's going to suit you, and you will likely succeed. And that often ends up being, underneath it all, what drove us into a certain job. It was a bunch of small decisions where we eliminated other options, and the elimination truly stemmed from a place of fear. So you end up potentially in a very well-fitted profession and a well-fitted job for your competencies. I would say there are a lot of people practicing law, practicing medicine, who are perfectly competent. They have all the prerequisites, they understand this thing in 360 degrees, and they are professionals, and they're good at what they do, and I consider myself like that. But are they doing their calling? I would argue most of them probably are not. Many of them are not. And what has happened along the way? Well, it goes back to the intention. So the way I think of a calling is this. You take something that you are naturally excited about trying. You take out all of the thoughts about jobs and how am I going to survive and how's this thing going to pay and how am I going to compete with everybody, and you go back to your intrinsic curiosities. And I'm going to use a story to sort of explain this concept. So, during the early stages of the pandemic, I was living in Colorado, and I was new to Colorado, and I was living in a building that had doormen downstairs, and I used to go downstairs at the end of each day, and I would chat with my doorman about whatever was going on in the world, and we would sometimes talk about books and plays and all sorts of topics. And one of my doormen was a very talented painter. I remember I had a chat with him one day, and I asked him, Robert, why did you decide to become a painter? And he said, it was because when I was young, I used to go to art museums with my family, and I was in Rhode Island, and we would go to these art museums, and I would see all these paintings on the wall. And I used to look at them, and I used to think, I want to do that. And I think I can do that. And I think I can do it really, really well. So he would have these feelings as he saw paintings on the walls. And similarly, I have felt that way about a lot of different things in life. I remember being young and going to the gym, and I used to go to this gym that my dad would drop me off when I was like 10 years old. And I would take like step aerobics classes with like all these older women. And there was this teacher, and she was so charismatic and warm, and she had such good rhythm, and she was so fit. And I was like, I want to be like her. But not just I want to be like her. It was kind of like, I don't want to just be a follower in this classroom. Like, I want to be leading the class. Like, I want to be bringing life. Like, I want to do what she's doing. I think I can do what she's doing. Something in me tells me that I have the skills and the talents it takes to do that thing. And I think I can do it even better than her. That like trilogy of thought is what I think is the doorway to your calling. You see something in the world, and you just feel a visceral sense of capacity. You're like, I don't know why. Maybe I haven't had the resources, but I'm looking at this person doing this thing, and I think I have the capacity to do it. And I want to try and do it. That is like this magical thing that sometimes gets lost when you're doing the process of elimination to try to find a job that you can use to survive. You use that spark of like, I just think I have the capacity for this thing, and I want to try. And when you start with that thing, you may never have taken a singing lesson, but you're like, I think I can hit those notes. And you may never have studied law, but you're like, I could give that closing statement. I just see it. I see it in my personality. I see it in the essence of who I am. Because you know your essence better than anyone else. Your true essence. The essence of you that is universal. That would be the same even if you had a different name, even if you had a different color skin, even if you were born in like a different family. There's something that makes you you. And when you see things that require skills and things that are part of what makes you you, you just know it. And the question becomes, are you going to indulge and try to learn how to do it? So if you do indulge in the things that you feel that natural like hunch to try to do, you're going to find out if your hypothesis was correct. So you're going to find out if you give something a proper test run, do I have the capacity to do this thing that I think I had the capacity to do before I tried it? And so maybe you go and you take those singing lessons, or you get the gymnastics classes, or you do the tennis, or you do whatever it is, and you start seeing, do I have the capacity? That's either going to be a yes or a no. Like sometimes you see something amazing on American Idol, and you're like, I want to look like that woman in that beautiful dress singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow and belting with her heart open, and she looks so beautiful and graceful. And then you go and you try and you try and you try, and you're like, they sound like a squeaky tire. And that's okay. That's okay. You had a natural curiosity, and you admired something amazing and beautiful that someone else inspired you to try, and that's wonderful. But maybe it is just some hobby that you got to indulge in. And by the way, you don't have to be good at any of your hobbies. You could be good or bad. It's just about joy. But it may not be your calling. It may not be your calling. What I think makes something your calling is when A, it triggers that internal sense of I have that capacity. Like I have the potential to do this thing. Plus, I want to do this thing. This thing I think will give me joy. There's a lot of things that you probably think you have the capacity to do, but not all of them are going to give you joy. When you find something that you're like, I think I have the capacity to do this thing. I think it's going to give me joy, and I think I'm going to be pretty good at it. And then you try that thing, and then here's like the magical fourth part. The universe confirms that your need to do this thing is needed in the world. This thing that you felt you had the capacity to do and that you wanted to do is needed by the world. All of a sudden, it's like synergy. It's like everything comes together and you're like, I think this is my calling. If you are just really good at your job because you've been doing it for a long time, but it's a job and a line of work you kind of arbitrarily stumbled into just because you kind of sort of enjoy it and you're kind of sort of good at it now, or even very good at it now, it doesn't make it your calling. I think your calling is something that draws on your capacity, and you knew it was going to draw on your capacity, and then you cultivated it. You cultivated that capacity, and then the universe said, yes, that thing that you're so capable of, that you knew heart of heart you would be good at, we need you to do that thing. You're now doing your calling. I do feel like that is where the difference between a job and a calling lies. A job is a safe bet. It's things that you can do that leverages your competencies and allows you to trade skill for value and survive. And you can do one that you enjoy with people that you like, or you could do one that you detest with people that you hate. And you might even be a professional or an expert and just relish the fact that you have become an expert or professional. But a calling is special. A calling is something that leverages the essence of who you were as you were born. And it allows you to recognize that that's who you were when you were born. And it allows you to follow your instinct of what you actually feel drawn to. And it allows you to have the crazy mad scientist phase where you're super weird and you're trying a bunch of different things because you're committed to the process of finding what actually hits and feels right. And then it's the thing that the world confirms is something you should definitely be doing. And I want to end this video by saying, when I say the world confirms, I don't mean that the masses of people have to like give you validation. It doesn't have to be quantity. It really is about quality. You know when you do something in a way that is very special and really well done and pretty uniquely executed, because it's the type of reaction that people give you. There are a lot of people that I think do pursue their calling and don't become famous or don't become super, super rich, but they're very aligned. They're doing something they felt leveraged their innate capacities, and then they cultivated and explored that potential. And when they do that thing, the reactions that people give them really does confirm that it's their calling. So focus on the quality of the world's reaction, not the quantity. But don't miss my point. The world will give you a response. When you take an action, there will be a reaction. So pay attention to it and see if you can find your calling, because I think that's like one of those great things that we're supposed to be trying to do our whole lives, is like basically be a weird, crazy, mad scientist and try different things until we really find the calling, and not be so scared of trying things that we may not be so good at, like we do when we eliminate the things that we need to eliminate in order to keep the GPA up, in order to get the good job, that you just stay on this like teeny tiny narrow path and stay so boxed in. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your stories. And until next time, I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.